Theory of demographic transition throws light on changes in birth rate and death rate and consequently on the growth rate of population. Demography is the study of human population, their size, composition, and distribution across space, and the process through which populations change. Birth, death, and migration are the big three of demography, jointly producing population stability or change. Birth rate can be defined as the number of live births occurring among the population of a given geographical area during a given year per thousand mid-year total population of the given geographical area during the same year. Death rates can be defined as the number of deaths occurring among the population of a given geographical area during a given year per thousand mid-year total population of the given geographical area during the same year. Along with the economic development, tendencies of birth rate and death rate are different. Because of it, growth rate of population is also different. According to E.G. Dolan, demographic transition refers to a population cycle that begins with a fall in the death rate, continues with a phase of rapid population growth, and concludes with a decline in the birth rate. Demographic transition model. The demographic transition is a model that describes population change over time. It is based on an interpretation begun in 1929 by the American demographer Warren Thompson of the observed changes or transitions in birth and death rates in industrialized societies over the past years. There are four stages of transition. Stage 1. Stage 1 is associated with pre-modern times and is characterized by a balance between birth rate and death rate. This situation was true of all human population up until the late 18th century. In this stage, both the birth rate and the death rate were very high. Their approximate balance results in only a very slow population growth. Death rates were very high due to a number of reasons, including lack of knowledge and disease prevention and cure, occasional food shortages, infectious diseases such as influenza, scarlet fever, or plague. However, on a daily basis, it is primarily the lack of clean drinking water and efficient sewage disposal and poor food hygiene that created an environment in which only a minority of children survived childhood. Water and foodborne diseases such as cholera, typhoid, typhus, dysentery, and diarrhea were common killers, as were TB, measles, diphtheria, and whooping cough. The high rate of birth could be due any or all of the factors that are associated with high fertility even today in many less developed countries. With a high death rate among children, there would be little incentive in rural societies to control fertility except in the most unbearable of circumstances.
Stage 2 sees a rise in population caused by a decline in the death rate and while death rate remains high, or perhaps even rises slightly, a consequence of a decline in mortality in stage 2 is an increasingly rapid rise in population growth. A population explosion as the gap between death and birth grows wider. This growth is not due to an increase in infertility or birth rise but to a decline in death. First, improvement in food supply brought about by higher yields as agricultural pictures were improved in the agricultural revolution of the 18th century. Second, there were significant improvements in public health and reduced mortality, particularly in childhood. There were improvements in water supply, sewage, food handling, and the general personal hygiene, following on from growing significant knowledge of cases of disease.
Stage 3. Stage 3 moves the population towards stability through a decline in the birth rate. The shift belies Malthus' belief that changes in the death rate were the primary cause of population change. There are several factors contributing to this eventual decline. Increasing urbanization changes the traditional values placed upon fertility and the value of children in the rural society. Urban living also raises the cost of dependent children to a nuclear family. Increasing family literacy and employment lower the uncritical acceptance of childbearing and motherhood as the measures of the status of women. Improvement in the contraceptive technology is also a reason for the decline in birth rate.
Stage 4 is characterized by stability. The fourth stage of demographic transition is characterized by low birth rate and low death rate of population, leading to a stationary population. It is therefore known as the stage of stationary population, where both the birth rate and death rate remains at a low level of leading to a very little growth in population. Due to the attainment of economic development, standard of living of the peoples reaches in high level during this fourth stage. During this stage, a significant changes in social outlook of the people has taken place under the impact of urbanization, industrialization, and high rate of literacy. Thus, at this stage, population becomes stationary at the low rate.
This figure is a diagrammatic representation of the demographic transition model. The whole theory is being condensed to this diagram. The diagram clearly shows the 4 stages of demographic transition. As we can see, in the first stage, both the death rate and birth rate are very high, resulting in a negligible population growth rate. In the second stage, we notice that there is a steady decline in death rate of population, accompanied with a high birth rate, resulting in a very high population growth rate. The second stage of demographic transition is thus also called the stage of population explosion. In the third stage of demographic transition, the birth rate is seen declining with a low death rate. As this stage progresses, we witness a decline in population growth rate. Next is the fourth and last stage of demographic transition, where both death rate and birth rate are very low, resulting in a low level of population growth rate. This graph explains the stages of demographic transition in India. Till the year 1921, the compound annual growth rate was negligible. The growth rate of population was held in check by the prevalence of a high birth rate and death rate. This period was marked by stagnant population growth. Till the year 1961, we observe a fall in death rate, which was largely due to the control of widespread epidemics like plague, smallpox, cholera, etc. The birth rate is also seen declining slowly. This stage is marked by a steady growth of population. Population growth reaches its peak during the years of 1961 to 1981. Further, we can see a sharp decline in both death rates and birth rates. India is currently in the third stage of demographic transition with a reduced birth rate and death rate. Now, we can look into the stages of demographic transition in China. Before the year 1950, China experienced a century of natural disasters, foreign invasions, and civil unrests, where their life expectancy was very low. Later, up to the year 1958, we can see a steady decline in the death rate of population. The communist government had shifted their attention to economic development. They developed a successful healthcare program and provided better nutrition to people, which brought a sharp fall in the death rate and infant mortality rates. During the period 1958 to 1963, the Great Leap Forward policy was implemented for forced industrialization. But there, political mismanagement and low agricultural production led to widespread famines, which led to a rise in the death rate and fall in the birth rates. The death rate rose higher than the birth rate, and the population experienced 5 years of natural decrease. The demographic disaster, or the Great Leap Forward, was followed by a baby boom in mid-1960s, and the economy began to recover. Throughout the 1970s, measures were taken to bring down the huge population that threatened to outgrow the available resources. What emerged was the one-child policy, which was very successful in reducing birth rates. China is now in the post-transitional stage with reduced death rates, increased life expectancy, and a comparatively reduced birth rate.
Limitations. The theory does not take into account migration, which is a huge determination of population growth. It neglects varying factors within a country which influence death and death rates. Natural disasters can cause high death rates, and the aftermath of wars can cause baby booms. These factors can cause an increasing or decreasing of the rates being studied in states it's supposed to fall or increasing respectively. Next point. There is no time interval between stages. Newly industrialized countries such as Malaysia and South Korea are advancing at a faster rate, while in less developed countries the advancement is and has been slow. Most less economic developed countries are still stuck in stage 2. The model assumes that all countries must follow the stage sequentially, which is not always true. Next point. The sharp, rapid decline in birth rate in stage 3 is not always as fast. Most countries, except where policies to decrease birth rate, show a slow decline in birth rate. Next point. Based on European countries. Next point. Leaving out of stage 5, which most developed countries are or transitioning into.
The theory of demographic transition is the most acceptable theory of population growth. It does not lay emphasis on food supply like Malthusian theory, nor does it develop a pessimistic outlook towards population growth. The Malthusian theory states that the rise in population will result in a drying up of resources. Thus, he encourages population control either by natural or human intervention. The demographic transition theory is also superior to the optimum theory, which lays an exclusive emphasis on the increase in per capita income for the growth of population and neglects other factors which influence it. The biological theories are also one-sided because the study only analyzes the problem of population growth from biological angle. Thus, the demographic transition theory is superior to all the theories of population because it is based on actual population growth trends of developing countries of Europe. Almost all European countries have passed through the first 3 stages of this theory and now are